The gym bag wasn't mine. That's what hit me first when I found it in Jenny's trunk, wedged between her protein powder and a bottle of cologne I'd never seen before. The bag had my initials on it, TR, but inside were boxer briefs that definitely weren't my size, and a little note that made me freeze. Property of C. My name is Tom Rourke, and I'm 38 years old. I fix computers for a living, which means people think I'm some kind of tech wizard when really I just know how to Google error messages better than most. My wife Jenny is a fitness trainer at Gold's Gym downtown, and up until 3 weeks ago, I thought we had a pretty good thing going. Sure, she'd been working late more often. Sure, she'd started using words like macros and gains in casual conversation, but I figured that was just professional enthusiasm. I was wrong about a lot of things. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Standing there in our driveway at 7 in the morning, holding another man's underwear, I felt like the biggest idiot in Cleveland. The note was written in Jenny's handwriting. I'd seen it on grocery lists for 12 years. She'd literally labeled someone else's clothes like she was running a damn laundry service. Property of C. Chad, I was guessing. Chad DeWitt, her business partner at the gym. The guy who looked like he'd been carved out of protein powder and arrogance, with teeth so white they could guide ships to shore. I put everything back exactly how I found it, closed the trunk, and walked inside. Jenny was in the kitchen making her morning smoothie, wearing those tight workout clothes that used to drive me crazy in all the right ways. Now they just made me feel sick. "Morning, babe," she said without looking up. "I've got 3 client sessions today, then that nutrition seminar until 9. Don't wait up." "Another late night, huh?" You know how it is, building the business. She finally looked at me, and for just a second, I saw something flicker across her face. Guilt, maybe, or annoyance that I was asking questions. I wanted to throw the gym bag at her feet right then. I wanted to scream about the underwear and the cologne and the little love note. Instead, I just nodded and poured myself coffee. Sure thing. Build away. After she left, I sat at the kitchen table for about an hour, staring at nothing. 12 years of marriage. 12 years of thinking I knew who I was married to. I felt like I'd been living with a stranger who just happened to look exactly like my wife. The worst part wasn't even the cheating, though that felt like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed my heart until it popped. The worst part was how stupid I felt. All those late nights, all those team-building events, all those times she'd come home smelling like someone else's soap, and I just assumed she'd use the gym shower. I'd been making excuses for her affair without even knowing there was an affair to excuse. My neighbor Ray knocked on the door around 10. Ray's an ex-cop who spends most of his retirement drinking beer and complaining about the state of the world. He's also the only person I know who can spot bullshit from 3 blocks away. "You look like hell," he said, helping himself to coffee. "Jenny finally tell you about her boyfriend?" I nearly choked. "What?" "Come on, Tom. The whole neighborhood knows. She's been bringing him around when you're at work. Nice car, muscles for days, leaves his protein shakes on your porch like he's marking territory." I sat down hard. "Why didn't you tell me?" Ray shrugged. "Figured you knew and were handling it your own way. Besides, would you have believed me 3 weeks ago?" He was right. 3 weeks ago, if someone had told me Jenny was cheating, I would have laughed them out of the room. Jenny was ambitious, sure, and sometimes a little cold, but she wasn't a cheater. She was my wife. Except she wasn't. Not really. She was Chad's something, and I was just the guy who paid the mortgage. "What are you going to do?" Ray asked. I honestly didn't know. Part of me wanted to pack a bag and disappear. Part of me wanted to confront her immediately. But there was another part. A part that had been growing since I found that gym bag, that wanted something else entirely. I wanted her to pay. Not just for the cheating, but for making me feel like an idiot. For all those nights I'd worried I wasn't good enough, wasn't interesting enough, wasn't fit enough. For every time she'd rolled her eyes when I made a joke, or sighed when I tried to touch her, or acted like spending time with me was some kind of burden she had to endure. "I'm going to think about it," I told Ray. That afternoon, I did something I probably should have done months ago. I checked our home security system. We'd installed cameras last year after a rash of break-ins in the neighborhood, and I'd set them up to save footage to a cloud server. I'd honestly forgotten about them until now. I pulled up the recordings from the past month and started scrolling through. Most of it was boring. Me leaving for work, Jenny leaving for the gym, delivery drivers, the occasional raccoon. But then I found something that made my hands shake. 2 weeks ago, while I was at a client site in Akron, Jenny had brought Chad home. They'd spent 3 hours on my couch doing things that definitely weren't covered in any fitness manual I'd ever read. The camera angle was perfect. It caught everything, including the moment when Chad had grabbed Jenny's face and said, "Your husband's never going to make you feel like this." And Jenny had laughed. She'd actually laughed and said, "Tom? Please. He doesn't even know what he's missing." I watched that recording 4 times before I had to stop. Not because it was too painful, though it was, but because I was starting to get ideas. Dark, satisfying ideas about what I was going to do next. See, the thing about being underestimated your whole life is that people forget you're capable of fighting back. They see a quiet guy who fixes computers and pays his bills on time, and they assume you're harmless. They assume you'll just take whatever they dish out and ask for seconds. They're wrong. I spent the next week collecting evidence. Not just the security footage, though, that was the crown jewel. I found text messages on our shared iPad, credit card receipts for hotels I'd never been to, photos on Jenny's phone that she'd forgotten to delete. I found out Chad was married to a woman named Melanie, who worked as a paralegal downtown. I found out he was selling steroids to gym clients, including my wife. I found out Jenny had been using our joint savings account to pay for hotel rooms and expensive dinners that I'd never eaten. Most importantly, I found out that Jenny and Chad were planning to make their relationship official. According to their text messages, they were just waiting for Jenny to handle the Tom situation after she got her hands on our house and my retirement account. The Tom situation. That's what I'd become. A problem to be solved. Well, I was about to become a much bigger problem than they'd bargained for. I started with Melanie DeWitt. I found her office address online and showed up during her lunch break with a manila envelope full of photos and printouts. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and the kind of smile that could cut glass. "Mrs. DeWitt, I'm Tom Rourke. I think we need to talk about our spouses." She looked at the envelope, then at me. "How long have you known?" "About a week. You?" "6 months." Her smile got sharper. "I've been waiting for someone like you to show up." We went to a diner across from her office and spread everything out on a corner booth. Melanie had been doing her own investigation, and between the two of us, we had enough evidence to end both Chad and Jenny's careers, their reputations, and possibly their freedom. "He's been selling steroids to half the gym," Melanie said, sliding a folder across the table. "Including your wife. I've got names, dates, and bank records. The only reason I haven't turned him in yet is because I wanted to make sure he lost everything first." I liked Melanie immediately. "What did you have in mind?" I asked. Her smile could have powered the city grid. "Complete and total destruction. Social, financial, legal, and personal. I want them to lose everything they care about, and then I want them to lose things they didn't even know they cared about." "That sounds perfect." We shook hands across the table like we were sealing a business deal, which, in a way, we were. The first phase of our plan went into effect the following Monday. I anonymously emailed the security footage to Gold's Gym corporate office, along with documentation of Chad's steroid sales and a detailed timeline of when he and Jenny had been using gym facilities for personal business. I also sent copies to the Ohio State Medical Board, since Chad claimed to be a certified nutritionist. Melanie handled the legal side. She filed for divorce and included every piece of evidence we'd collected, making sure it would become part of the public record. She also reported Chad's drug dealing to the police and the DEA. But we weren't done. Not even close. On Tuesday, I took a personal day and drove to Jenny's parents' house in Shaker Heights. The Holts had never liked me. I wasn't rich enough, educated enough, or ambitious enough for their precious daughter. They'd made that clear at every family gathering for 12 years. Mrs. Holt answered the door in her tennis outfit, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. "Tom, what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be at work?" "I brought you something," I said, handing her a USB drive. "It's some recent footage of Jenny. I thought you might want to see what your investment in her education has produced." I left before she could ask questions. I didn't need to stick around. I knew they'd watch it. The Holts were nothing if not curious about their daughter's life. By Wednesday, the dominoes were falling fast. Chad had been arrested at the gym during the morning rush, handcuffed in front of his clients and dragged out past the juice bar. The local news picked up the story because it involved steroids and a popular fitness center. Jenny had been fired immediately and was facing her own charges for possession and distribution. But the real fireworks started when Jenny came home that night. I was sitting in the living room, reading a book and acting like nothing had happened. She slammed through the front door looking like she'd been hit by a truck. "You bastard," she said. "You destroyed my life." I looked up from my book. "Did I? How so?" "Don't play dumb with me, Tom. I know you're behind this. The cameras, the police, my parents." "Your parents called?" Her face went white. "What did you tell them?" "Nothing. I just showed them what their daughter's been up to. They seemed very interested in your extracurricular activities." She started crying then, which might have moved me a week ago. Now it just annoyed me. Tom, please, I can explain everything. Chad and I, it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You've been screwing him for months, using my money to pay for it, and planning to divorce me so you could take half of everything I've worked for. I closed my book and stood up. The only thing I didn't expect was how sloppy you'd be about it. I never meant for it to happen, she said. It just did. But we can work through this. We can go to counseling. Jenny. I walked over to her, close enough to see the mascara running down her cheeks. Until, I want you to listen very carefully. You have 24 hours to get your things and get out of my house. After that, any belongings you leave behind will be donated to charity. You can't kick me out. This is my house, too. Actually, it's not. Check the deed. I bought this place 2 years before we got married, and your name was never added to it. Funny how you never noticed that. The look on her face was worth every sleepless night I'd had since finding that gym bag. Where am I supposed to go? I don't care. Maybe Chad's wife will let you crash at her place. Oh wait, she's divorcing him too. Maybe you two can get a place together. Jenny left the next morning while I was at work. She took her clothes, her car, and about $300 from our joint checking account, which was all that was left after I'd moved everything else to a new account in my name only. She also left a note on the kitchen counter. This isn't over. She was right about that. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched Jenny's life implode from a safe distance. Her parents had cut her off completely after seeing the security footage. Her friends at the gym had distanced themselves once the drug charges became public. She'd been evicted from the apartment she'd rented because she couldn't make the deposit without access to our savings. Chad was in county jail awaiting trial, and his wife was systematically destroying everything he'd built. Melanie had frozen all his accounts, seized his car, and was in the process of taking half of his business assets. She'd also made sure every gym in the city knew about his legal troubles. But I wasn't satisfied yet. Jenny had spent months making me feel like nothing, and I wanted her to understand exactly how that felt. So I got creative. I started small. I created a fake Craigslist ad offering free fitness training, using Jenny's phone number and a photo I'd found on her Instagram. Within hours, she was getting dozens of calls from people wanting workout sessions. When she tried to explain that it was a mistake, most of them got angry and started leaving negative reviews on every platform they could find. Then I escalated. I printed flyers with Jenny's photo and the headline, "Home Wrecker for Hire," along with details about her affair and drug use. I didn't post them anywhere. That would have been illegal. Instead, I left them in strategic locations where I knew her former friends would find them. Coffee shops, the grocery store, the library, places where gossip spreads naturally. Within a week, Jenny couldn't go anywhere in our neighborhood without people staring and whispering. She'd become local entertainment, but the real masterstroke came when I ran into her at the courthouse. She was there for Chad's arraignment, looking desperate and hollow-eyed. I was there to file the final paperwork for our divorce. "Tom," she said, grabbing my arm as I walked past. "Please, I'm sorry. I know I messed up, but I'm losing everything. I don't have anywhere to go. I can't find work, and everyone in town thinks I'm some kind of monster." I looked at her for a long moment. A month ago, this woman had been planning to take everything I'd worked for and leave me with nothing. She'd been laughing about how clueless I was, how she could manipulate me without me even knowing it. "Jenny," I said, "do you remember what Chad said on that security video? About how I'd never make you feel the way he did?" She nodded, tears starting to form. "Well, he was right. I never made you feel worthless or desperate or completely alone, but I'm learning." I walked away and left her standing there. The divorce was finalized 3 weeks later. Since we'd had a prenup, something Jenny had insisted on back when she thought she was going to out-earn me, she got nothing except her personal belongings and her car. Everything else stayed with me. Chad got 18 months in prison and lost his business license. Melanie took him for everything he was worth and then started dating a lawyer from her firm. She sent me a Christmas card with a photo of them in Cancun. As for Jenny, she eventually found work at a gym in Akron, about 40 miles away. I heard through the grapevine that she was living in a studio apartment and driving for a rideshare company on weekends to make ends meet. Her social media accounts had gone dark, and none of her old friends kept in touch. I probably should have felt bad about that. The old Tom, the Tom who'd spent 12 years making excuses for her behavior and trying to be the perfect husband, would have felt terrible. But I wasn't that Tom anymore. 6 months after the divorce, I was having coffee with Ray on my back porch when he asked me if I ever regretted how things had played out. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you just confronted her quietly? Worked things out in private instead of burning everything down?" I thought about it for a minute, watching the sunrise over the neighborhood where Jenny and I had planned to grow old together. "Ray," I said, There's something you learn when someone betrays you that completely. It's not just about the betrayal itself, it's about the fact that they thought you were too weak, too stupid, or too pathetic to fight back. Jenny didn't just cheat on me, she looked at me every day for months and thought, this guy will never figure it out, and even if he does, he won't do anything about it. And you wanted to prove her wrong. I wanted to prove to myself that I was worth more than that I deserved better than being someone's backup plan while they figured out how to screw me over. Ray nodded and took a sip of his coffee. So no regrets? I thought about Jenny in her studio apartment, driving strangers around for tips. I thought about Chad in his prison cell, probably wondering how his perfect life had collapsed so completely. I thought about all the people who'd underestimated me, who'd seen a quiet guy who fixed computers and assumed I'd just take whatever they dished out. No regrets, I said. A year later, Melanie and I started a security consulting business. We specialized in helping people protect themselves from fraud, identity theft, and infidelity. Our first case was helping a woman gather evidence that her husband was embezzling from their joint business. We were good at it. Really good. Turns out, when you've been underestimated your whole life, you develop certain skills. You learn to pay attention to details other people miss. You learn to be patient, to plan carefully, and to strike when your target least expects it. You learn that revenge, when done properly, isn't about anger. It's about justice. It's about making sure that people who think they can use and discard others learn that actions have consequences. Jenny texted me once, about 2 years after everything fell apart. It was late at night, and I could tell she'd been drinking. I know you hate me, but I need you to know that I loved you. I really did. I just got confused and made terrible choices. I'm sorry, Tom. I'm so sorry. I stared at that message for a long time before I deleted it without responding, because the truth was, I didn't hate her anymore. Hate requires passion, and I'd used up all my passion on destroying her life. What I felt now was something colder and more final, complete indifference. Jenny had taught me that some people will take everything you give them and then ask for more. They'll use your love against you, exploit your trust, and laugh about how easy you are to manipulate. But she'd also taught me something else, that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined, that I could take the worst thing that had ever happened to me and turn it into the foundation for something better. My security business was thriving. I had a house that was truly mine, friends who respected me, and a future that I was building on my own terms. I'd learned to value myself enough to walk away from people who didn't value me. And sometimes, late at night when I couldn't sleep, I'd think about that gym bag I'd found in Jenny's trunk, the one labeled property of C. I'd learned something important that day. I was nobody's property but my own, and I was worth protecting.